Renowned chef and World Central Kitchen founder Jose Andres speaking out, claiming the IDF targeted systematically car-by-car humanitarian vehicles. This satellite photo shows the destroyed vehicle on a road designated for humanitarian aid, stretching 1.5 miles apart.
So this was not just a bad luck situation where, we dropped the bomb in the wrong place or no, this was over 1.5, 1.8 kilometers with a very defined humanitarian convoy that had signs in the top, in the roof.
Prime Minister Netanyahu says Israel deeply regrets the incident. Israel's military chief added in a video statement late Tuesday that the airstrike was a grave mistake and was not carried out with the intention of harming World Central Kitchen aid workers.
On June 6, 1967, Israeli Air Force fighters attacked Egyptian air bases, destroying 80% of their air assets. By June 7th, the air forces of Jordan and Syria were also destroyed, mostly on the ground, but the war was being monitored. The United States and other nations had a vested interest in what was transpiring in the Middle East, and gathering intelligence was critical for both political and strategic military planning. The USS Liberty was a floating CIA intelligence gathering platform monitoring all transmissions from all sources involved in the 1967 Six-Day War.
Brass check note, I believe this is an error. They called it a CIA boat, but it was really an NSA boat. In reality, the NSA controls the movement of Navy ships. They have super secure communications facilities on every major Navy ship, and the orders for where a boat should go come from the NSA. Or let's put it this way, the NSA can override normal military operations. In fact, some naval captains are so annoyed by this arrangement, they resent being what they call taxi drivers for the NSA.
Israeli progress was followed as well as the Arab coalition of Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, known as the United Arab Republic. As a result, Israel secured Sinai, all of Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights. But Israeli intelligence had reported to Chief of Israeli Naval Operations, Admiral Issi Rahar, that a ship had fired upon El Arish in Sinai. This was proven to be a ruse. The only ship in that area was the USS Liberty, which flew the U.S. flag and was in international waters. In what was described by both President Lyndon B. Johnson and the Israeli government as a case of mistaken identity, Israeli air and naval assets attacked the USS Liberty on June 8th, killing 34 Americans and wounding 172 of the 294-man crew. Previously, the United States had announced that it had no naval forces within hundreds of miles of the battlefront on the floor of the United Nations a few days earlier. However, the USS Liberty was assigned to monitor the fighting. As a result of a series of United States communication failures, whereby messages directing the ship not to approach within 100 miles were not received by the Liberty, the ship sailed to within 14 miles off the Sinai coast.
If the USS Liberty got closer to the shore of the Mediterranean than the U.S. Navy wanted, it's because the NSA ordered it to. The orders would have been sent to the super secure communications unit on the boat, and they would have passed those orders on to the captain, and the captain would have followed orders. That's how the world actually really works.
Also notified of the supposed attack upon El Arish were Colonel Shmuel Kislev, head of Israeli Air Force operations, and General Yeshayahu Benket, the head of Israeli Air Force intelligence. Kislev told his pilots that, quote, if they could confirm that it was a military ship, they could hit it, end quote. The naval contingent was also on the alert. Beneket wanted to have positive identification of the ship that may have been involved. Israeli Dassault Mirage fighters passed by and gave their report. The flight leader confirmed that it was an American ship. More Israeli fighters attacked at 14:05 hours for 20 minutes, firing cannons, machine guns, and rockets, and one report from the first pilot who hit the ship stated that oil was leaking. During that time, on board Liberty, radioman Terry Halbardier and Glenn Oliphant followed the captain's order and broadcast in the clear that they were under attack by unknown forces and needed assistance, but their communications antennae were then damaged. They performed a manual repair and began transmitting in the open as their secure channel was being jammed. The 6th Fleet received the SOS and informed the commander of the carrier task force on board the USS Saratoga, Captain Joseph Tully, who called and launched 12 F-4 Phantom fighters to assist Liberty. And the hotline between Washington, D.C. and Moscow was activated. Moscow was informed that American aircraft were being launched only to surmise the situation regarding the Liberty, not to get involved in the war. But as the Phantoms were en route just minutes away from saving the Liberty, it was reported that Secretary of Defense Robert Strange McNamara mysteriously had them recalled. The only way a SecDef could do that was by presidential authority. Johnson knew the truth, and he was part of the problem. The next wave of Israeli aircraft arrived after the Phantoms returned to the Saratoga, and these were Dassault Super Mysteers with napalm and canister bombs. One pilot called out the ship's identification as Charlie Tango Romeo 5, and that there is no flag on her. This was a strange report, as the previous recon flight clearly stated that there was an American flag, and the ship was identified as such. It is believed that this call was made as a ruse to cover the Israelis should these attacks be recorded by third parties. When that transmission was made, Colonel Kislev ordered all aircraft to stop the attack, as he believed that the ship was, in fact, American from the call sign. But the Israeli commander of the torpedo boat squadron, Moshe Oren, stated that he was not informed that there was a recall from an attack, and was informed, in fact, that it was the Egyptian freighter, the El Qasir. Therefore, he launched 3 motor torpedo boats. The order to halt all attacks, which followed the second wave of fighters, was supposedly not received by the naval assets, whose 3 torpedo boats launched 6 torpedoes at the Liberty, with 5 failing to hit target, but the one that did contact killed 25 men and wounded many more. This account is in great dispute. However, the Israeli argument of misidentification fails for several reasons, one being that if they believed it was an Egyptian ship, why did they specifically jam the secure American radio frequency, which were specifically narrow bands? Another problem was the identification issue, in that the Liberty, at 10,150 tons, was 5 times larger than the ship they claimed to have mistaken for the Liberty. Both ships had totally different profiles. In addition, if the attack was a simple error, why were the Israeli jets unmarked, bearing no Israeli symbols, carrying no national identification, in violation of international law? Had the F-4 Phantoms from the Saratoga not been recalled, the torpedo boats would not have been able to engage, and the majority of the men would not have been killed and wounded. The official American position was that Israel called and said that they had recognized their mistake and the attack was over. So therefore, in response, McNamara recalled the jets. However, the attacks were then renewed for another 80 minutes. This was a strange development, since the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv reported that the Israelis had attacked a ship, but the nationality of the ship was yet undetermined by Israel. If this was true, how would McNamara know to recall the Phantoms, and that it was in fact the Liberty? The SOS was resent after the damaged antenna was repaired again, and it was picked up this time by the aircraft carrier USS America, and 2 ships were dispatched. 3 life rafts were deployed so men could get off the burning ship, but the torpedo boats focused their fire, destroying 2 of the life rafts and sweeping the decks to kill as many men as they could to prevent an evacuation. That act alone is a violation of the Geneva Convention, not to mention attacking a ship from a non-belligerent nation in international waters. Another strange development was when, after the 2-hour attack, the ship and crew headed to Malta, the 6th Fleet commander, Rear Admiral Isaac Kidd, ordered the survivors to remove the ship's name from their uniforms. In fact, Admiral Kidd even ordered them to go ashore in civilian clothes, which the men were not supposed to have anyway. They were also told to grant no interviews and do not discuss the situation. even among each other. Otherwise, they would face court-martial and prison, or, even worse, for violating national security.
Further, how many people were killed and wounded that day?
There were 34 killed. 9 were killed topside in the aircraft attacks, and 25 were killed in the research compartment by the torpedo explosion. We had a total complement of 294 personnel altogether. That included 3 civilian analysts from the linguists from the National Security Agency, us 3 Marines, and the balance were naval personnel, both intelligence personnel and those who operated the ship. There were 208 total Purple Hearts awarded out of a crew of 294.
34 people are killed and many more wounded. And yet, this goes down in history as an error with which some compensation was paid for the error. But then let's deal with sort of the big question, Bryce. Based on you being there that day and what you saw, why do you think this couldn't have been a mistake?
We were overflown several times during the morning of June the 8th by Israeli aircraft. At least 8 times, 8 different occasions that we were overflown. And the reason they were doing that is to make sure that they knew exactly where all of our transmitting antennas were, so when they attacked, they could knock us out. Now, the excuses the Israelis give, well, they didn't see a flag. Excuse me, they shot down 2 flags, and we ran up 3. The 3rd flag that we ran up was our holiday flag. That's the largest flag you have aboard ship. They claim, well, we couldn't see a flag because of smoke. Well, there wasn't any smoke until the Israelis dropped napalm on us. They claim that they thought that we were an Egyptian ship, the El Qasir, which is a World War I horse carrier, had not been to sea for 20 years and was waiting to be cut up for scrap. Well, there's some problems with that excuse also. Number one, U.S. ships are painted gray with white markings. Our hallmark was GTR-5. That's your ship's license plate. GTR-5 stands for General Technical Research, the 5th ship of her class, the largest and newest ship of her class. General Technical Research means she's a non-combatant, and non-combatants are not legitimate military targets. I mentioned U.S. ships are painted gray with white markings. Egyptian ships are painted black with gray markings, and those hallmarks are in Arabic script. Big difference. And nobody from Israel can give me the excuse that they don't know the difference between English markings and Arabic script. All highway signs in Israel are marked in Arabic. If you go on YouTube and search the day Israel attacked America, there's an hour-and-a-half long film on there, and the actual conversations in Hebrew between ground control and the aircraft are on that film, the day Israel attacked America, in Hebrew, identifying it as an American ship. Had the Israelis been shooting at the El Qasir, which they claim, the torpedoes would have totally missed. Torpedoes have to be set for a certain depth in order to strike their target in a vital place. USS Liberty was 3 times the tonnage of El Qasir and much larger depth. Had the Israelis been shooting at El Qasir, the torpedoes that they fired would have totally missed because of the difference in draft.
All right, let me read this quote from Steve Forsland. Steve Forsland is an intelligence analyst for the 544th Air Reconnaissance Technical Wing, then the highest level strategic planning office in the Air Force. And I'm quoting Crudzen's piece. Quote from Forsland. The ground control station, meaning the Israeli ground control station, stated that the target was an American, and for the aircraft to confirm it, Forsland recalled. The aircraft did confirm the identity of the target as American by the American flag. Quote, the ground control station ordered the aircraft to attack and sink the target and ensure they left no survivors. Forsland said he clearly recalled, quote, the obvious frustration of the controller over the inability of the pilots to sink the target quickly and completely. He kept insisting the mission had to sink the target and was frustrated with the pilot's responses that it didn't sink. Nor, Forslund said, was he the only member of his unit to have read the transcripts. Everybody saw these, Forslund, now retired after 26 years in the military. So if this is correct, the mission is to sink the boat.
Yes, the aircraft were still fighting us. The torpedo boats were circling us and riddling us with heavy machine gun fire. Yeah, all of our life rafts, we had 2 racks with inflatable life rafts on them. Those were napalm. There was nothing left of those but a few rags from the davits. Those were totally unusable. The Captain's launch and the Liberty launch, with the 2 boats that we had that were used for getting personnel back and forth between shore and the ship, were just riddled with heavy caliber fire. They were totally useless.
So in your mind, is there any doubt that the mission was no survivors?
No survivors, absolutely no survivors.
Well, we know that Terry Halbardier succeeded in joining that cable and getting the SOS out, which in turn was intercepted by the Israelis, who broke off the attack. Now, meanwhile, the commander of the 6th Task Force there in the Mediterranean had sent fighter bombers from the USS Saratoga and the USS America to do battle with whoever it was that was attacking his naval ship, the USS Liberty. We know, furthermore, that they were called back on the direct instruction of Secretary of Defense McNamara and the President of the United States, Lyndon Johnson. We know that from several sources. One of them is from Admiral Geiss, who was in receipt of these orders and very reluctantly ordered his fighter bombers back. He told one of the Liberty crew who managed to make it to the USS America that he was ordered not to pursue this, to turn them back, because President Johnson did not want to embarrass an ally, Israel. So that's one of the indications here. The others are either in communications intelligence. You know, the big thing here, Paul, for a intelligence officer is that there are certain species of intelligence after which analysts or journalists actually lust, okay? And those are hard evidence, like intercepted communications. And when we have the Israeli pilots, as we do, saying, that's an American ship, and we have ground control saying, follow your orders, strike it, well, what further need have we for proof? So number one, what we know is that it was a deliberate attack that was meant to sink everything with no survivors. And number two, we know that it was covered up because everything done in the aftermath of that attack was done to cover it up, to include naval officers, naval lawyers, who were persuaded to keep their mouths shut under orders because we did not want to embarrass an ally.
Admiral Geiss notified Washington, and Robert McNamara came back on the line, ordering them returned. Admiral Geiss said he wanted to hear that from higher authority. Lyndon Johnson himself came on and said, get those aircraft back. I will not have my allies embarrassed. Now, excuse me. The Israelis were using unmarked aircraft. We did not know who was attacking us. Excuse me, unmarked aircraft is a violation of international law. So since the Israelis were using unmarked aircraft and we did not know who was attacking us, how did Lyndon Johnson know that his allies were attacking us?
Brass Check TV, free to you, not free to us. We've got a server bill, we've got an email software bill, we've got a tech helper bill, and that happens every month. So to everybody that is supporting us financially, that's paying for their subscription in one way or another, we really appreciate it. If you're not, consider doing so. Everybody's got money for the newspaper and the cable bill and all that. Do you have money for media that's actually serving you? That's really the issue here. And when you help us, it allows us to get this information out to the world. So thanks to all our supporters, and if you're not a supporter already, please consider becoming one.